Hello, mixtresses and mixters. Oh my god, literally press record. The weed whacker starts. This is mixtressrae. You're listening to Landscape Radio. Okay, cool. It's fine. Okay, so I thought it would be maybe interesting to... So it seems that there's kind of, the conversation's been going around of like, who am I? What is my channel? And I want to take it a step further and answer the question, who is my audience? Who do I think my audience is? Who am I directing my content to? So first of all, that question can be answered in 2 seconds, and you can leave if you want. But I probably will be talking for however many minutes you see at the bottom of the screen here. So that question, like, who is my audience, can be answered with anybody who wants to watch this, obviously. This is public. This is a public channel. And you can, if you are interested in what I have to say, you are welcome here. However, I've been thinking about this lately as far as like, as there have been, more eyes on me lately, like, how do I navigate this? Okay, so now that they're like, I've been on the internet for a minute, truly. And I do have notes. I'm trying to be a little bit more organized. And lately I've been using my Patreon as sort of a dress rehearsal for the things that I want to bring up on YouTube, which is interesting, I guess, maybe. Because, like, they're getting the even more autistic, unfiltered, like... here's kind of what I think I want to say. I don't know, But, okay. So, sorry, whatever. I'm a process queen. And this is my process. I have a general idea of what I want to say. I press record and I try to say it. So I've been thinking about this concept of, like, who is my audience? And when I say who is my audience, I just mean, like, more specifically, like when I'm sitting in my tarot closet and I'm trying to express an idea to you, who do I conceptualize the person that is listening to what I say? Now, the majority of the time that I've been on the internet, I've had this YouTube channel since 2014. I've had a weekly internet radio show since 2014 as well. So that's really the last 9 years is when I've been trying to verbalize my experience in life on the internet, essentially. I mean, I've had blogs and shit in the past, but this is when I've tried to literally verbalize, use my literal voice to speak to. I've always conceptualized it as screaming into the void, but lately the void has been screaming back. Not to like call people that listen to me the void, but I have always sort of felt like I was screaming into the void and I wasn't getting much of a reflection back. So I didn't know if my words were landing with people necessarily or not. So it always felt, in that case, I was just saying exactly what I felt out loud. I wasn't being super cognizant of who I thought was listening to me. Until just very recently, I've never really thought of myself as like I don't have a brand. I don't like present myself in a particular way. I mean, with the exception of like, we all have masks. I am here on YouTube under the drag persona of mixtressrae. Like, we all have masks, right? But like, overall, I am just a human being on the internet trying to express my thoughts, and I haven't really thought of things in terms of like, curating my content. You know, there's no rules really with what I'm here to say, what I'm here to do. But I've been trying to think about that a little bit more now that there seems to be more eyes on me, at least for the moment. And then like, okay, so the reason why I'm asking the question of like who my audience is, like, I realized that back in the day when I conceptualized myself as screaming into the void, there was no possible audience. I was just speaking out loud. I was just talking to myself. I was my audience. That's how I conceptualized it. And lately, pretty much since the video that I posted a month ago, that I just call the video, something changed because, you know, it was like an awakening moment of like realizing that people are listening. And it's not like I didn't think people were listening before, but like, you know, it was a real like rude awakening. Like, oh yes, a lot of people are listening, and many of them are not. Many of the people in the larger audience of who can hear my words are not necessarily coming from this sort of base space of, I guess, okay, so the general idea for me has always been, I always assume that people are doing their best. And I assume that everyone else is assuming that we're all doing our best. It's like, I assume that everyone else is kind and doing their best. Kind and respectful and doing their best. But that is actually not the case. You're not necessarily assuming that I'm kind and doing my best. And I'm not sure how to speak to that person. If I now know, without a doubt, that not everyone assumes that I'm kind and doing my best, and not everyone out there is kind and doing their best, I don't want to live in that world though, you know? So I am going to assume that everyone listening to me is kind and doing their best, and I hope that you will assume the same about me. So I think that's a good way to word it. But to get into, and again, drop off now if you want, my words are for anyone that wants to hear them. And I also hope that not only are you kind and doing your best, but that you know that I am too. You know? So we're like-minded in that way. But to take it a step further, like, for example, so after the video, I posted sort of my clarifications, mea culpas, etc. in a follow-up video 6 days later. I went back this week and I listened to that video. I was shelving at work, so when I say I listened to a video, that usually means like I wasn't literally watching it, and I'm very literal, so I have to say listened, you know, just for context on that. So I listened to my video that I made 6 days after the video, and it was so cringy to me because who I assumed was listening to me had changed. I was making that video with the wider idea that like a lot of people would be listening to me with a lot of different viewpoints. And I cannot contain that audience inside my head. So I'm just kind of, this video, I'm just trying to talk out and try to conceptualize and verbalize with you who I feel that I am speaking to. That video that I made 6 days after the video, in that video, in my estimation, I sounded small. I was being hyper controlling of my word choices, and I felt small, and I felt wrong, and I realized that I was trying to speak that doesn't like me, that doesn't want to understand me. I was trying to explain myself to the person that doesn't want to understand me. And I don't want to make videos with that audience in mind. So, going forward, I want, I've been conceptualizing, like, if I'm imagining a person that I'm speaking to, like, is it easier for me to imagine that I'm speaking to a specific person? Is it easier for me to imagine, like, do I want to imagine somebody that's like my best friend and we're sitting down, having coffee and tarot? Do I want to imagine myself talking to a best friend? Do I want to imagine myself talking to a neutral person? To sort of the neutral amalgamation of all different types of people with all different types of opinions? Or do I want to speak to the person that doesn't like me? Do I want to win over someone that doesn't like me? Do I want to speak as if I'm speaking to a best friend, or do I want something in between? Do I want a neutral? And I had really toyed with the idea of the neutral person. Like, I would love for people to get me, even people that wouldn't normally get me. I would want them to get me. So speaking in towards the more neutral audience, and by that I just mean, like, trying to speak at the same time to both the people that are really like-minded people, but also the people that aren't like-minded. Do I want to try to speak to both? And I don't know if I can handle that, because if I feel like I'm speaking generally to people that are going to misinterpret what I say and might yell at me in the comments, if I keep that person in mind, I'm going to start speaking in such neutral language that it's not going to be interesting anymore, in my opinion. What I say won't be interesting. I don't want to lose the way that I process. And yes, I'm going to evolve. And yes, the way that I process things with you guys is going to inevitably change as if more eyes continue to be on me, / more ears can hear me. I don't think I can completely control that, but this general vibe of I'm just waiting every week for people to tell me what I've said wrong and what I've done wrong, and how do I navigate that? How do I just can't do it. I have to remain me. I have to speak the person that I want to speak to. And by that, I don't mean that anyone else isn't allowed to be here. I'm just saying that in my own brain, who I'm going to be assuming I'm speaking to, here's who that person is. 15 minutes in. Let's go. I'm going to be speaking to like-minded people. I am going to be speaking about the topics that I am interested in, that I would want to hear. I am going to be approaching the things that I talk about and the items that I show on my channel with myself in mind. Because I know there are people like me out there. And I think we've lost, not just on tarot YouTube, but on YouTube, on the internet in general, we've lost some specificity because we are so afraid to say our opinion because someone might disagree with it that we have stopped saying much of anything. Our language in general has become so obsessively neutral. And I am not talking about, hateful speech. I'm not talking about, sexism, racism, ableism, bullshit, bigoted speech. I'm not talking about that, because that shit needed to stop. I'm talking about just having opinions in general. We've stopped expressing anything that we have any idea that someone might disagree with. And why is it not okay to disagree? We can fucking disagree. But, so if we don't say anything that someone might disagree with, it means we're not saying anything. And I'm not interested in that. I don't like the person that I was in that video that I made 6 days after the video. Because I was stilted in my language, I was small. So I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that small person. Which means I'm going to step in it sometimes. And it's not always because I'm an asshole. Sometimes it will be because I'm an asshole. And I am absolutely willing to acknowledge when I've been an asshole. I have no fucking problem with that. No problem with that. Truly. But I also don't want to feel like I'm an asshole when I'm not. When I'm just expressing my experience. Okay, so what are some other things that I wrote down? Some of this stuff feels like I'm over-explaining myself, some of the stuff that I wrote down in my notes. One thing I'll say, I can understand how all the, talk about, tarot, consumerism, capitalism shit can be, is boring to other people. I can understand that. Look, seriously, I wish I was a person that didn't have to count every penny that I have. Some people, I think, their response to me is girl, you're thinking too much about all this shit. Yeah, I am thinking too much about all this shit. But I'm thinking too much about all this shit partially because I have to. It's every single dollar that I spend, I have to kind of budget for it. I have to be very mindful about where I put all of my money. I don't get to just, black out and spend $50, most of the time. I mean, there are some times in my life where I can do that. So, I'm not trying to shame anybody that has the means to buy all the things. If you have the means and the space and you feel good about it, buying all the things, I'm not here to try to make you feel bad. I'm here just talking about my own struggles. And I'm also talking to other people that have similar struggles. And I am talking to you as well, but I'm not trying to make you feel bad, It's that accusation that, people like me talking about struggling with our finances and struggling with our consumption habits and our shopping addictions, that idea that we are telling other people how to live, we all need to let that fucking go. There's too much fucking policing online already. Believe me, I'm not going to be trying to police anybody else. I don't like that shit, and I don't want to do it to you. So, and that's just something that, it's just happening so much online these days. We all are supposed to use very specific types of language and talk about things in very specific ways. And if we don't have all the facts about a thing, then it means that we endorse something awful or whatever. And it's just, I'm sick of that shit, dudes. I really think that most people are doing the best that they can. And that does kind of somewhat elegantly, or maybe not elegantly, but somewhat segue, gotta turn my fan on, it's getting hot in here, into something else that I have in my notes. My God, it went out again. God. Okay, I just have to leave this open, even though it's so ugly. I hate it when you have to, see all the ashes and stuff. First of all, my method of delivery, of not being able to stay on topic, being all over the place, all that shit. Like, if you're here, you're just gonna have to accept that because that's who I am. I'm sorry, but I've been trying to be more organized, and it is... I can't tell if it's helping at all. Maybe a little bit, but not much. Yeah, it's... Okay, so here's what I want to talk about. One of the things that I noticed was really an issue in some of the ways that people responded to me in the video. Was there was some classism happening. There was some ableism happening as well, in people's reactions to me. Not responses, but reactions. And it was projections, and I knew that from the beginning. I knew that that's what that was. I knew that the way that they were talking to me is the way that that the evil voices inside their head talk to them. And that sucks. That sucks. I'm sorry that is a voice that they would have. I don't like it. I don't like it being directed at me, and I don't like that they have to have it, you know? It sucks. It's pain. But, what was the point of that? This is how I am. So one of the things that I keep coming up against, like every time I bring up finances, every time I bring up spending money and how hard I have to think about it, because I don't know a world where I don't have to be hypervigilant about every dollar I spend. I don't know that world. I don't know that experience. And so that's where I'm coming from. And it's not me saying that you should feel the same. Me sharing my experience is not saying that that's the only way. It's not. I would never. I know that we all have different experiences. And sometimes I do have a myopic view of the world, just like we all do, right? Because we literally don't know what it's like to be inside anyone else's head but our own. You know? So, yeah. But one thing I do want to talk about. So, a thing that happens with economic inequality in our world, if you grow up, and this is documented fact, when you grow up in poverty, and there's a huge range, right? Like, of course, like, there's always somebody that's had it worse than you. But if you grow up in poverty, if you grow up in economic scarcity, even at your very best, growing up like that keeps you in a state of hypervigilance, anxiety, and survival mode. And growing up like that, your brain develops... You essentially have trauma brain, right? And it resembles people that have had a lot of trauma that maybe didn't have the economic hardship growing up. It presents sort of similarly in the way that the brain develops and the way that the brain is organized. And essentially you have, whether it's through trauma, and it does present as trauma, whenever you have to count every penny growing up, it presents as trauma in your brain, and you are more likely to experience other types of traumas. Think about it. Think about the time in your life when you have been the most in survival mode. Think about how erratic your behaviors were, how erratic your emotions were, just think about what kind of person you were when you were in survival mode. And think about growing up when that is your default mode of being. Your brain develops differently. And a few of the things that happen, people that grow up with that kind of, people that grow up in poverty, I'm just going to say it like that. People that grow up in poverty, and of course, there's a range. But people that grow up in poverty, in general, they have a more limited vocabulary. They speak with a lot more expletives, and they speak louder. Like their register, just in general, is louder. And they use a lot of, they tend to use very dramatic gestures too. Like their body language is big, their voices are loud, and they have less sophisticated speech. Also, a thing that happens when you're in survival mode, and everybody's been in survival mode at some point in their lives, so you can look to yourself and how that presented for you and extrapolate that into a lifetime of feeling like that, right? You can do that, and some of you have been there, some of you are there, some of you have always been there. And it's difficult. It's difficult. And I know a lot of people have had it worse than me, and I am very lucky in a lot of ways. But I also know what this is like. And I also, like, everything's a spectrum. I am on more that side of the spectrum than the educated and sophisticated part of the spectrum, right? Like, it's, and this is where classism comes in. And this is something that I'm going to talk about, you know? I know y'all don't like me to talk about it, but I'm going to. I mean, I say y'all, but a lot of you do see yourself in me and are interested in what I have to say about it, even if you don't see yourself in me. But those are the people I'm talking to. People that want to hear what I have to say, you're the ones I'm talking to, right? Like, let's not perseverate on that point, even though I'm going to, but I'm trying not to. Okay, maybe I can close it now. The video where Mixtress Rae messes with her incense burner the whole time. Very entertaining shit, right? So the thing about when you're in survival mode, there's something called time horizon. So when you're in survival mode, when you have trauma brain, which literally your brain develops differently when you grow up in survival mode, like I said. And it's, what is it? Your prefrontal cortex is less developed and your amygdala is more developed. The amygdala is like the fight or flight animal lizard brain, right? Lizard brain. Your lizard brain is more developed when you are in survival mode growing up, and people in poverty have to live that way by necessity. You have to live day by day. You're literally planning, a day at a time, which is why this time horizon concept comes in. And I've talked about this before on my channel, but I just find it really fascinating. So in case you haven't heard me talk about it, or you don't know the concept in general, which I didn't know it until a few years ago. But so the time horizon is just basically how far you can see into your future. And people that are in survival mode, people that grew up in poverty, or they grew up with a lot of trauma, or for whatever myriad different intersections of reasons, if you're in survival mode, you usually can only see maybe a day into your future, maybe a week. And that changes the way that you interact with the world, right? Everything has an immediacy to it. Everything is desperate. Everything is right now or never, because you don't know if you're going to make it to. I mean, it's not always like literally, this is like logically. Logically, you may know, like, you may not think I'm going to die tomorrow, but your brain when your brain is in survival mode a lot of your life, things have that sort of immediacy to them. Like, which is why when people kept saying to me in my comment section of the video, like, just save. That's all you have to do. It's a really difficult concept for me to wrap my brain around. And there's a lot of different reasons for that for me personally. But just to explain it from the standpoint of, like, time horizons, I have never been able to see much beyond, like, the next week. So I've never been good at planning things, and some of this is autism related, like executive dysfunction, things like that. But I have had some trauma in my life, and also grew up with limited means. It's been limited, like how much money we have and getting by day to day, paycheck to paycheck. Paycheck to paycheck is even like somewhat of a luxury, you know, because it's like I don't make it a full 2 weeks on my salary. I'm happy if I make it a week, and yeah, it's scrappy, you know, it's a scrappy life, and I'm not here to complain about it. You know, like every once in a while I will complain about it, but it doesn't mean I'm just sitting here whining. It just means I'm sharing my experience, you know? So something that happens, and it's all critiques that I've gotten, you know, like I've gotten a comment from someone before, it's like, it seems like you have really interesting things to say, but do you have to curse so much to say it? I think you could get your point across without doing that. And of course, I would have loved to just react, well, fuck no, I can't fucking get my point across without the fucks. But anyway, so these are all factors, right? There's so much nuance in life. Everything is a spectrum. Everything has nuance. It's not binary. Like, what am I trying to say with that? I don't want to obsessively curate my speech, because for one, I don't think I'm capable of doing it. I don't think I am. Like, the more I try to be organized with what I say to you guys, the more difficult it is for me, and I'm not here for this situation, this YouTube situation. I don't make enough from this for it to be unpleasant, you know? I don't want this to be unpleasant. I want to enjoy myself. I want to express myself. And genuinely, if I do need you to take care of yourself, though. Genuinely, if the way that I express myself and the content that I talk about is absolutely upsetting to you, I want you to take care of yourself. I want you to, you know, hide my channel in the algorithm, whatever you gotta do. Truly, because I want to be here, I want to express myself, and I want to be able to be a mirror for people that have similar experiences to mine. But again, just to sum up the whole who is my audience thing, my audience is anyone that enjoys hearing me try to process my thoughts, whether you agree with them or not. If you enjoy this process, if you enjoy hearing what I have to say, you are welcome here. And as long as, if you disagree with the things that I say, I absolutely am fine with that, as long as you're not treating me with disrespect. You know? And I think in general, we, as an entire society on the internet, need to get better about respecting each other. You know, we need to get better about, I think it would be good for us to all assume that we're all doing our best and that we're all trying to be kind. Because if we assume that in others, we will also be putting forth a kinder self in the process. Okay. I think I'm going to end it there. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.